Is fan fiction good for your emotional health? I think it is. I believe it is, and that is what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm really excited to get into this with you. We're going to be talking about how to really use fan fiction as a way to get to know yourself at a deeper level, understand your needs, maybe some of your hidden wants and desires out of life and out of a relationship, and really help you to have a better relationship with yourself and really understand yourself at a deeper level is the theme that's coming through. The vibe today is self-acceptance and self-soothing. I'd like this video to be the video equivalent of like a hot bath or a warm, hot, sweet cup of tea on a rainy British afternoon. That's kind of the vibe that we're going for. Maybe you're watching this in bed and you're all cozy. So let's get into it. Before we do, I'd just like to introduce myself. So if we haven't met before, I'm Cheryl Muir. I'm a relationship expert and I help smart women fall in love after a lifetime of heartbreak. And I'm also a former professional fangirl, which is a title that I'm just making up. But what that really means is I spent a lot of time on Tumblr in 2010 through to 2014 and sunk like thousands of hours, literally thousands of hours into, I'm trying to get this ring on the right finger without it breaking, without breaking my finger or the ring. Yeah, I sunk literally thousands of hours into fan fiction and fandom. I used to write fan fiction in various different fandoms, including the Gotham fandom and a few others that will remain private and unmentioned. So I'm sure you can read between the lines. We're all very intuitive. I've read a shitload of it. I wrote it. I created a book out of it in 2016. And yeah, so it's something I really understand deeply. And I've been wanting to talk about this for a long time. So let's get into it. I suppose the obvious place to start is to say what is fan fiction, but I'm not going to do that because I think that's obvious. And I'm also just looking at my Wi-Fi and it looks like it's not connected. That can't be true because we're on the internet. Maybe it's okay. I'll just continue on and hope it's all right. The obvious place to start is what is fan fiction, but if you're here, you already know that. Now, if you know my work in general, this video might not be for you and that's okay. But for those of you that get it, you really get it. And I really want to help you today. So what we are going to start with then is looking at what is the difference between emotional health and mental health? What is it and what isn't it? So mental health is going to be experiencing things that are diagnosable like depression and anxiety. And though I've been through that, I deeply, deeply, deeply understand, I'm not a mental health professional. So I'm not going to be talking about that today. So I'm just going to acknowledge that. And then also health. So emotional health is our relationship to our, it is understanding what our needs are, what our boundaries are. It's been better when we felt sad or angry or anxious or felt a little bit down, and being able to regulate our emotions and self-soothe, and then also have the skill set to be able to communicate that to other people, like, hey, I need a hug, may I have a hug? Or hey, I really need to talk about this, do you have a minute to listen, right? Instead of doing that emotional vomiting thing or just like clamming up and not asking for help, or sinking ourselves so far into fandom and fan fiction that we're actually really disconnected from our needs and we're numbing out from it. So that's emotional health. And we're not talking about mental health, we're going to talk about the emotional health side of it. At the end of this video as well, I am going to give 3 signs that your use of fan fiction might become maybe not the most helpful, dare I say maladaptive. Maladaptive is just basically a psychological term, you may have heard it, and it means it used to help you to cope with difficult things and now it's causing problems and ruining your life in many different ways, right? So that's what maladaptive is, and we're going to talk about some signs, 3 signs that maybe fan fiction has become that for you and you're using it in a way that's not helping you move forward, and I'm going to address those things, right? But overall, the vibe today is like fan fiction can be a really good thing, it can be really healing. Also at the end of the video, I'll maybe touch on some of my experience with fan fiction and how it's really helped me. So if that's interesting to you, it'll be the end of the video. If it's not interesting for you, then that's okay as well. If you don't know me or you're like, don't really want to know, that's okay. We're going to get into the meat of the video now. So the first thing I'd love for you to dive into, and by the way, as you're kind of getting into the video, like, you feel welcome to like grab a brew, grab a journal and a pen, something to write with, or your laptop. It might be worth taking some notes, and there's also some journaling prompts in the comments down below for you too. Let's talk about the first point, which is empathy and common emotional experiences. So what I'd really like you to do here, before we really get into talking about the types of fan fiction you're reading and what that might tell you about what you need and how to really meet those needs in a really beautiful way, let's get really clear on the character or characters that you're reading about. What I tended to find with myself is that there's usually one character I was reading or writing about at any given time. Now, though the characters over the years may have been different, the themes and patterns are kind of the same. Like if I look at it, I'm like, hey, they're very similar. If you were to describe them and what they've been through and the position they're in and what they're struggling with, there's a similar theme and pattern. So I want us to look at this from the lens of emotional experience, right? It's not going to be literal. So you might think, well, Cheryl, I really love Wonder Woman, but my mum didn't sculpt me from clay and I wasn't brought to life by Zeus. And I didn't grow up on this like paradise island with these Amazonian women and discover I'm a demigoddess that was meant to slay my brother Ares, the god of war. That's oddly specific, right? And you might not have been through that, but you might have had the experience of learning about your own power, right? You might not have struggled to get into the army and then been injected with a serum with some slightly questionable ethics, I might say, and then become a super soldier and then meet the love of your life, but then be in a crash and then be buried under ice for 70 years, only to be awoken to join the Avengers and try and take down a demigod who has a penchant for wearing a little too much leather, right? But you might have had that experience, as I had, that really humiliating experience of being the last person to be picked for the sports team at school, or standing there with the rounders bat, which is baseball if you're in Canada or America. But in England, we have this really horrendous, traumatizing game called rounders that I hated with every depth of fiber of my being, standing there with the rounders bat and not being able to hit the ball and everyone seeing and like laughing at you, and it's like really traumatic. So when you see Captain America or Steve Rogers when he's young and he's struggling, you're like really rooting for him because you understand what it's like to be the kid that's not doesn't physically have that prowess, right? You might not have been abandoned on a frozen rock in Jotunheim and then adopted / stolen by Odin Allfather and then raised to be a prince of Asgard, only to find out later actually you're a frost giant and he could have had a frost giant sitting on the throne of Asgard, etc. But maybe you did have the experience of feeling like you didn't fit into your family, or that you felt invalidated or gaslit by a parent, or that you felt like you weren't emotionally nourished by your father or your mother, right? Or maybe you felt like kind of the goth kid in your family, or that you were the kid that like you were always reading your books and the rest of your family were like watching sports or playing sports, or they really valued athleticism and you valued the arts and literature. Very Loki Thor vibes, right? So look for the common emotional experiences. The journaling prompts are down below, and I'll also read them out here if that's helpful for you to hear them verbally as well. So look at what has this character been through, and how is this similar to my own experience? How did I feel when this happened? And what did it make me believe about myself? Right, so it might have made you believe I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, don't fit in, it's not safe to be who I am, there's something wrong with me, all these kind of things, right, that feel really real but that are not the only available truth to us and don't really serve us in moving forward. The next prompt is, knowing this, what do I need, right? What do I need to give to myself, to say to myself? What do I need, knowing that this was a really painful experience for me? It's also worth then, as a more general side, asking yourself, what is emotionally tethering me to this character, right? What do we mean by emotionally tethering? What I mean is, you weren't just moved by a performance. You didn't just think, oh, that's really great acting or really great writing. You were like, I feel that in the depths of my soul. I feel it right in the feels, right in the honey nut filios. I feel it right in there. And you're sobbing and you're seeing this character suffering and you're like bawling your eyes out. You wouldn't be able to connect on that level if you hadn't been through something that is similar, or that that is reminding you of something that you went through. I have a quote on this. Let me see if I can bring this up real quick. Where is it? Where is it? Oh, it was a post I made on Tumblr. I do have a professional Tumblr account, somewhat not professional, but it is what it is. And the post is, I don't know who needs to hear this, but the empathy you feel for the suffering of your favorite character can be healthy and healing for you because you see yourself in them and the empathy is actually self-directed. right? So you have empathy for them, and sometimes it can be easier to go, oh my God, look at everything he or she has been through, look at everything they've been through. But when you think about it, did you feel exiled from a group? Did you feel like the odd one out? Did you feel like you didn't fit in? Did you feel like you were always in the shadow of a sibling? Did you feel unloved by a parent? Whose love did you crave the most, your mother or your father, right? So it can be a little bit more challenging to ask ourselves them questions. You might be like, fuck off, I'm just going to watch the Avengers and just fucking enjoy it. In which case, that's totally fine. You can turn the video off now. But I would just challenge you just to go a little bit deeper with that, to really kind of enrich your emotional life and your inner world, to be able to ask, well, did I go through something similar? And is this actually quite validating for me to see someone else in that position, or to be able to see a scene where I see that I'm thinking of the scene in Thor: The Dark World where Loki is devastated and crying and just absolutely bereft after the death of his mother. It's just so, it gets me right in the gut. And I remember seeing that scene and like kind of pointing at the screen to myself. I was watching it on my own and going, that's it. That's it. That's what I experienced. I didn't have the words for it. I didn't have the costume and the makeup and the set design and the cameras and the editing and the soundtrack. But when I see that scene, I'm like, that's what it felt like. That's what I went through. Maybe it's not exactly the same, but the emotional experience, I'm like, that, what it felt like is how that scene looks. And there's something really healing and validating about that. So what is emotionally tethering me to this character? Which scene did I find really moving and why? And what does this tell me about myself? So point number 2, emotional regulation. Emotional regulation. So I'm going into the vibe now of the types of fan fiction you're reading. In fact, let's take a step back and just ask yourself that. What types of fan fiction are you reading consistently? Is it the comfort fics and the fluff? Love some comfort and fluff. It's beautiful. Is it the smut? By the way, we're not talking about smut today. Do you want the good news or the bad news? Bad news first. The bad news is we're not talking about smut today. The good news is I'm going to dedicate an entire video to it because it's such an important topic, and I feel very passionately about sexuality and bisexual representation in film and television, but also using fan fiction and literature as a way to really explore our own sexuality, our preferences, our orientation, so on and so forth, our type of partner we want, all of that good stuff. So I will get into that in another video. But what kind of fan fiction are you reading? Is it the comfort? Is it the fluff? Is it the, what's it called? Is it called Wump? Is that what they call it? I forget what they call it, where the character's always getting like beaten on. Is it like, what is it? Is it romance? Like, what's the type of fictions you're reading consistently? And when do you read it, right? This is going more into emotional regulation now, but when do you tend to read it? So how are you feeling before you read it and how are you feeling after? So that might be like, well, I actually tend to reach for it when I feel stressed or sad or anxious. Okay. And then after I've read it, I feel calm and I feel comforted and I feel validated. So just notice that. Just notice when you're using fan fiction as a means to regulate your emotions. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. But just know when that's happening and just ask yourself, okay, so what is this telling me about what it is I need when I feel really tender and really vulnerable? What do I need to give to myself and what do I need from other people? I have another quote. I'm going to read it for you, also on the Tumblr machine. The quote is, comfort fics are actually really good for your emotional health. They help regulate your nervous system and learn healthy models of self-soothing. They also teach you how to respond to someone else's trauma compassionately and how you need to be supported when triggered or in pain. So really, really important to be able to read those fics and ask yourself, like, is it a reader insert and the reader's being comforted? Is the character being comforted? And when I look at that character being comforted, have they been through something similar to me? And am I, again, is that empathy for them? Is it self-directed because I actually want some comfort myself and I want to receive that? And just look at as well what's happening, particularly in that comfort or fluff fic. Is someone receiving, let's say it's a reader insert. Is the reader, good old YN, living her best life, is she or he, are they receiving like verbal validation? Is someone seeing them and hearing them? Is someone giving them empathy and warmth and compassion? Is someone receiving a hug? Like, what is it that's happening in that comfort fic? And is that something that actually you really need to receive? And is there a way that you can ask for that from the people around you? This is not about stopping reading it. This is not about going, oh, I can't read fan fiction ever again. Well, no, it can be a vehicle. It can be a vehicle. It can be a way of understanding what you need and what you need to be emotionally nourished. And then taking that off of fan fiction and kind of moving it over a bit like a Venn diagram and overlaying it onto your life and asking for what you need. And I think the thing is with fiction, and it's worth saying, especially if you're writing it, there's a certain level of control there. There's a certain level of control in that you can design exactly what people are going to say and do. Whereas in real life, that's not the case. So that control thing that can be under the guise of being creative, actually, what's the fear there? What's the fear? What are you afraid might happen in real life? Is it that someone might say the wrong thing and it might upset you? Is it that you want it to be exactly a certain way? You want to be supported in a specific way? Like, what's the fear? You know, and just how can you be courageous and ask for that in real life? Ask someone to support you in that way. And who are those people and who are those people not? Right? It's worth noting some of you might have family members or people in your life who are not emotionally equipped to support you. So it's worth knowing that too. It's worth being honest with yourself about who those people are. And I'll stop there because there's a point I want to touch on later on about when it could be masking things that are lacking in your life, right? So the third and final point is common themes and patterns. So I'd like you to think about, maybe we can close our eyes, think about the types of stories that you're reading on repeat. And I don't just mean I'm reading it for entertainment or because I like writing or the characters are interesting. Like, when you start to think about the things that you're reading, what are some of the common themes and patterns? Just think about that. What repeatedly happens? How does it start? How does it end? What are some of your favourite tropes? Like, is it good old enemies to lovers, passionate about enemies to lovers, amazing? Is it that it's someone who is very avoidant and is scared of intimacy and then gradually learns to trust again? Like, is it someone who is like self-made but then they learn to partner with someone? Like, what's the vibe? What's happening? Just think on that for a second. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. So, what common themes and patterns are you seeing in your stories, whether you're reading it or writing it? What is this telling you about what you want from your life, the partner you want, or how you want to be treated? So I noticed a pattern back in like 2014 when I was writing a Gotham fic that I turned it into a book eventually and added some original characters. I noticed that it was like a self-made woman who was really strong, but then eventually learned to let love in. And you know what I noticed about a lot of the characters that I'm drawn to is they're usually in a position of power of some nature, or they're at the top of their game. Maybe they're like the best assassin in the city, or they're a criminal mastermind and they're super smart and they're like dressed really, really well, or maybe they're a king or a prince or a god or a demigoddess. So knowing all of that, like, what's going on underneath there? What do you think that might be saying about yourself and about what you want, right? What's your relationship to power, to your own power? What's your relationship to structures of power, right? If you're always attracted to the one that's the best at what they do, like they're really, really brilliant, then is there something in there about your brilliance and how you really want that to be recognized and seen? Right? So just get curious. We don't have to overanalyze the crap out of every little thing, but just get curious if you start to notice these patterns and you're like, actually, yeah, they tend to be really intelligent a lot of the time. So is that a recognition of your own intelligence? And or is it maybe a sign that you want to be with a partner that's really, really smart? Here's something that I didn't have written down, but I think it's worth getting into. What characteristics, what traits does your favorite character possess? Write it down, brainstorm it out, and then when you've done that, create another list and go through and just like humanize it. So you might be like, I love that Wonder Woman can do that amazing thing with her wrists and like shoot out that energy. I think that's so cool. I love that she's a warrior goddess and all of this. So like write all those traits down and then humanize it in the second list. So go down each point, and is there a real life version of that? So what is it about that you love? Well, I think it's like a symbol of power. Great, write that down. Powerful. I want to be powerful. I want to activate my own power. She's a warrior goddess. So, okay, what's that in human terms? Well, she's strong. She's fit and healthy. She's strong. She's physically strong. Is that something you want? Yes. Great. Write that down. So go through and kind of translate it. Right. These gods and superheroes and supervillains, and are there even any supervillains anymore, or is everyone just really misunderstood? I feel like everyone's just misunderstood. I always empathize with the villains. That's a good thing to look at too. I did a video on that, why you always thirst for the villains. But that's more a sexuality thing. I'll link it up above nonetheless. But who is it you're usually relating to? Is it the one that's kind of been like cast out? Or is it the hero? Or like, who are you usually resonating with? I feel like my people resonate with the villains. They're really anti-heroes, just very misunderstood, I think. Why am I relating to them? Because I felt misunderstood, and I know what that's like, right? I'm sure we're all the villain in someone else's story anyway, right? So just notice the types of characters you're being drawn to, and if there's any like commonalities there, whether it's magic or physical strength or whatever it might be. Maybe they're like revered, is that even the right word? Like maybe they're celebrated and applauded, and you want to be celebrated and applauded. Like just get curious about that. So what traits does your favorite character possess? What are the in real life or human equivalents? Yeah. Okay. So we've been through that. So the 3 points that we covered are empathy and sharing a common emotional experience with the character that you read and write fan fiction for. The second point was emotional regulation, really understanding when you're reaching for fan fiction and maybe what kind of emotional needs it's meeting within you, and when you reach for it when you're feeling a certain way, and is there another way you can meet that need? So I'm feeling sad or stressed, I'm going to reach for fan fiction, but actually what else can I do? It's not bad that you're doing that, but is there another way you can meet that need? What will help you feel better if you're sad, right? Incidentally, the use of fan fiction went up exponentially during lockdown. Frontiers of Psychology did some research on that. I'll link the video above that I did around that. So yeah, it certainly is common that we dive into fictional worlds when our real world is feeling really scary and really unsafe. Incidentally, also as well, if you are feeling like you can't stop reading it, or it feels like a really strong pull, like a magnetic pull towards it, it's likely because it's meeting some core baseline foundational emotional needs like comfort and safety and belonging. So just be aware of that too. Again, none of it's bad. It's just awareness. It's just feedback. It's just information. The third point was around common themes and patterns. So what is it you're consistently seeing in your stories? What storylines do your favorite fictions tend to follow? What's that telling you about yourself, what you want from life? Maybe some desires you're suppressing, some qualities you want to inhabit, and you're like, oh, I could never do that. Who am I to do that? Who are you not to? You're amazing. You're a person that was created by the stars, and you're of the divine. Like you're attracted to all these divine archetypal characters. We're all divine too. Like we all have souls. We're all infinite and amazing. What are the stories you're reading? What are they telling you about the type of partner you want, how you want to be treated, and how you want to be supported, right? And then finally, we had a bit of a bonus point, which was what traits does your favorite character possess? And then what are the real life or human equivalent of those characteristics? And is that something you want to possess or something you want to have in a partner? So really quick, because this is already becoming quite a long video, let's look at some signs that maybe your use of fan fiction has become maybe a little bit something that might be concerning or something that might not be helpful long term. So we're going to cover 3 points. And the first one is you use it to replace real human connection. So again, this was really common during lockdown because we were all isolated, but are you reaching for fan fiction to really meet those core emotional needs when actually that is missing from your life? So maybe ask that question, like, am I getting a need met by reading this story that could be met in real life? And if so, how can I get that need met? The second sign is you use it to avoid what's difficult and what's painful. So I see this as being slightly different feeling because When you're consciously saying, I feel really sad, I feel like I need a comfort fic, and you read it and it really comforts you and nourishes you, that's quite aware and quite conscious. Whereas the other, it's kind of the equivalent of like turning on the TV or grabbing your phone and scrolling forever when you feel anxious and doing it unconsciously. So just notice when you're reaching for fan fiction, when actually you may just want to take a pause and say, how am I feeling right now? And what do I need? Right? And do I really want to numb out and read smut for 3 hours? Or actually, do I need to just journal or talk to a friend, or, you know, go to my counselor or go to my coach? Just be aware of it. Again, nothing's bad or wrong. It's just awareness, right? And the third sign is it's stopping you from either sleeping, eating, meeting your basic needs, or taking care of your real life responsibilities to the point that it's negatively impacting your life. So you're up reading fan fiction or writing fan fiction till 3 a.m, and now you've had 3 hours sleep and you can't function at school, college, work. Something's going on in your life that's really stressful that you have to deal with, and you're avoiding dealing with it because you'd rather read or write fan fiction instead. So it's become a not just a coping mechanism, but it's gone like one step further, and it's become this vehicle for numbing out and avoiding. And so it might just be worth looking at that. Incidentally, when we tend to avoid our big emotions, it's often because we have an avoidant attachment style. Avoidant attachment styles typically are about avoiding intimacy with other people. But interestingly, we also avoid the intimacy with ourselves. We really avoid looking at those painful emotions. And that's when we can get into the pattern of fantasy relationships, particularly through fan fiction and fandom. So just be aware of that. One thing I kind of want to touch on, I don't know if I should, I think this was in Frontiers of Psychology too. I saw there's some kind of sexual orientation, it's been said, where you form a relationship with a fictional character, and it's something like fictophilia or something, I forget what it's called. It might not be called that, I might be making it up. Now, I really am a bit concerned about this being brought to the table as a sexual orientation. I think whatever you decide about yourself is your decision, and I respect that. But I would just kind of, I would challenge that perspective, and here's why. I see it as being more of an attachment pattern, a pattern of fantasy relationships, because maybe we don't feel that love is safe. And I struggle to, I mean, self-shipping is fine. There's nothing, it's okay, you know, there's nothing wrong with it. But I would really, really ask you to kind of dig deep and just ask, like, am I really happy with this? Is this really what I want? Or am I settling for this because I feel like real life love isn't safe? Or am I using it to meet my need for connection, but what I really want is like a real person, a real partner? So I would just kind of challenge that. And obviously on the sexuality front, I'm pretty open anyway. I mean, I'm bi, or whatever people want to call it, women and men. Yeah, so it's not like I don't get it, but I think that I'm a bit concerned about that being labelled as a sexual orientation. I think it's more an attachment style thing. But what I would say is, like, if you're really, really deeply emotionally connected to a character, it means you can also be really, really deeply emotionally connected to your future partner as well. It's a good thing. It's a good sign. It's a sign of the depth of your compassion and emotion. It's a positive thing overall. But I would say for most people, if we're really honest with ourselves, I think that it's probably not nourishing us emotionally fully, is what I would say on that. So yeah, the signs that it's become maladaptive, you use it to replace real human connection, you avoid it to use what's difficult and painful, and then it's negatively impacting your life because you're not sleeping, eating properly, or taking care of your responsibilities, or meeting your basic needs. If any of those three things do apply to you, what I would say is don't go cold turkey, right? Because if this is the case for you, it is a coping mechanism. So don't just like yank it away and rip it away. That's going to be too painful. Just gradually kind of reduce it and sort of look at the needs that it's meeting and how you can get that need met in real life. So just kind of ask, like, what is missing in my life, right? Deep, meaningful connection to my friends or to my family or to a partner. Okay, so how can I create that? How can I start to create that for myself while you still, you know, read some of the fics that are actually keeping you healthy? Even though your relationship to it may have become unhealthy, it's doing something for you mentally and emotionally, so don't rip it away. Still, if it's helping you to emotionally regulate and you don't have those skills yet, then still read it, but maybe learn how to help yourself to feel better at the same time. I have a ton of content on that. I'll link it up above. So yeah, so don't go cold turkey, just gradually kind of reduce it as you're finding healthier and newer ways to get to know yourself. I could talk to you about this for like 3 hours. This has already been a half-an-hour video, so I'll stop there. But if you have any questions, key takeaways, things that made you go, oh my God, I never saw it in that way before, please share with me below. I'd love to hear it. I'll respond to as many comments and questions as I can. And yeah, I'll keep making these videos. I want to talk about smut fiction next, and sexuality, and yeah, what that means and how that can help us to understand our sexuality, and also get that need met in person instead of just writing or reading about it, because that's important too, and you deserve to have your needs met. I really hope this was helpful. If it was, share it, tag me. I'm on Tumblr, obviously. Why would I not be? And I'm also on YouTube, obviously, and Instagram and Twitter. You can tag me there. I'd love for you to share it and reach as many people as possible, because I think this is something that has not been talked about as much as it should, and I've honestly been meaning to talk about this for a really long time, so I'll continue to do that. Oh, I was going to share my story about fan fiction. I feel like we've gone on for too long now. Maybe I'll do that in a separate video, but I definitely will say it's helped me a lot in understanding who I am, and it really became a safe place for me to play with like my shadow and process some of my like rage and anger. Rage and anger can be processed physically, and it should be, and it was very cathartic to write a really like violent fiction. And yeah, as you can tell, I'm like quite a cinnamon roll of a person, but at the same time, like it gave me a healthy place to play with my shadow, and that was really helpful for me many years ago. And yeah, it was great for me, great for my emotional health. But I'll expand on that in another video. Thank you for being here. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram and the Tumblr machines, and right here on YouTube. Subscribe if you like my content, and ring the bell to be notified when I go live or post a new video again, and make sure you share your takeaways in the comments below. I love you. You're doing a beautiful job, and you deserve to be emotionally nourished and have your needs met. I love you.